Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Express, which is becoming everyone's favorite talk show. It is profoundly real and interesting, so without any further delay, please help me welcome back to the stage the beautiful and expressive director of Express, Carolyn. Carolyn, take it away.
Good evening. Welcome to Express. It's Carolyn, your host. It has been 24 hours, but we're back again. So I must remind you to like, share, and subscribe. Why should I ask you to do that? Because I know you're not selfish and you want others to know and to enjoy what you are enjoying. So touch that subscription button so that others may know about what you're enjoying. For those who've been with us from the beginning, which is only a few months ago, thank you so much. We appreciate you. Without you, this show would not be what it is. For those who have just stopped by, thank you so much for coming. And we do hope this won't be the first or the last time. So come along, journey with us. Just touch that notification button, the subscription, and you will be inundated. For so our guest today is Merry Kammerer, and her real name is Meredith. So I am going to introduce you. So let me start. So Mary has been sharing wellness and nutrition with friends and family for over 20 years now. She's a certified functional nutrition counselor through the Functional Nutrition Alliance and also a health coaching certification through Dr. Eric Berg Health and Wellness Coach Training Program. Mary, her style of counseling is best described as practical and direct, while focusing on each client's unique story and journey with a warm, compassionate demeanor. She offers nutrition help and teaches you how to successfully take control of your health outcomes. Health obstacles and challenges don't develop overnight, she said, and the road to resolving them lies in understanding that there's only one you that's there, only you. Every part of you matters, and everything is connected. It is her earnest desire for us to come alongside and offer practical diet and lifestyle assistance that will equip you to nourish and steward your physical body so that anyone can be fully alive for all that God has planned for them. Her favorite text she has left with me is 3 John 1 2, and it says, Beloved, I pray that in all respect you may prosper and be in good health, just as your soul prosper. Without further ado, let us welcome Miss Mary.
Hi.
Hello. Fancy meeting here.
Oh, yes. Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Oh, it's so nice. You know, Mary, the first time I met you, well, to be honest, the first time I met you until I started, and I haven't, yes, I've met you once. But as I get to know you, I get to love you more and more. You know why? You're so down to earth. You're so humble, and I love people like that. I
Mhm.
gravitate to humble people. I gravitate to people who are willing to share and who are quick. I see you in situations and you think very fast, especially when it comes to technology. You know, that's not my strongest point. But anyway, I'm so glad that you are here. And I'm so glad that you are willing to come and to share your story with us today. Now, let me start by asking you, where were you born? I tend to ask most people that, where they're born, because, knowing where someone's from says a lot. So, where
Uh,
were you born?
yeah, I agree with you. I think everybody's story is so unique, and we have to know the beginning to understand how the journey has gone and where it's headed towards. I was born in Columbia, South Carolina. I grew
Mhm.
up in Columbia, South Carolina. Did not leave there until I was 18 years old. Went out to embark on my own, kind of do my own thing.
Yeah. Okay. And your parents. Tell us a little bit about your parents.
Well, so it was 1968 when my dad and my mother met for the first time. He was a Vietnam War veteran, and he was coming back into the United States, flew into Topeka, Kansas, which is where she was living. She was a farmer's daughter over in Kansas. And so they met, and as it turned out, she got pregnant. And so she had to uproot basically and go to South Carolina, to a land she said was like an alien nation to her as compared to the plains of Kansas and the culture of Kansas, very different from the deep South.
Yes.
And so she and he were together for 6 years after that. They had my little brother, who was about 3.5 years younger than me. And unfortunately, it really was not a good situation. You can imagine my mom um, having to move that far away from her family, being pregnant with, unexpectedly, and then to marry my dad, who unfortunately she found out as they proceeded that he had a real serious drinking problem. And the type of drinking he would do, he was one of those that when he would drink, he would get very weepy. He would go from weepy to angry. And so here she was trying to raise me and then my brother with a violent husband who was not really supportive at all, away from her family. Sometimes I think about that, and I don't know what I would do in that situation.
Mm.
And so they were together for 6 years, and she tells me that I actually said to her as a little child, "Mama, can we go far away and just get away from Daddy?" Because it was so traumatic being in that home. My first memories of my life at all were memories of. Hold on, just 1 second. There's a gnat in my in it's the fruit fly season. They love to come into my home because I have lots of fruits and vegetables.
Okay.
Anyway, uh, my first memory as a child was of my dad coming in late at night and ripping the telephone off the wall and threatening to choke my mother with the cord. And I mean, it was very traumatic. This is stuff that you find out that a lot of people go through things like this, but many times they're afraid to talk about it. But I was relieved. I honestly remember them not being together, going from living with him to not living with him, and being relieved. I didn't really want to spend a whole lot of time with my dad, even though he had visitation every other weekend and such. But my dad was doing the best he can. I know in hindsight, he was raised by parents who were very poor. The father was also a jailbird. My grandfather, he was in and out of jail, and he drank all the time. And so my dad was doing the best he could, with the tools that he had to work with, which wasn't much. And so that was the early years. And then as I progressed as a teenager, um, the hurt and the trauma, and I think this is common to people who have trauma in their childhood. You don't realize that you're going to do this, but you end up looking for the very thing that will deeply wound the person who's wounded you.
Mm.
And I made lots of decisions as a teenager that I didn't understand why I was making them. One of the decisions I made was I began to date young men that were black instead of white. And that was a big deal in the Deep South. And there was a lot of issues surrounding that. When my dad would see, some of the magazines or different things that I was looking at, he would call my mother and, he was about ready to lose it. And I just thought basically, well, you can't tell me what to do. I'm just going to, this is my life. I'm going to do what I want. The motive for doing that, though, is what I understood later as I became a Christian and began to understand sometimes why we do the things we do. We see the what, but God sees the why. And there was a lot of why in there, and there is for everybody. And so, as the story progresses, I at 18 years old decided that I was going to marry a black man, and I moved all the way from South Carolina to Texas to do that. This was a young man.
Were your parents aware?
Well, my mom knew about it. I actually never lived with my dad. I lived with my mom and my stepdad. Both my parents, by the way, got remarried, and I had good step parents, really good step parents. But no, my mother knew I was leaving and why, but my dad never was told why. In fact, I lied to him and told him that I was going to join the Baptist Student Union mission because I, at that time, had become a Christian as a senior in high school. But you say you're a Christian, but, it takes time for God to work out that character and nature inside of each of us as we come to him. And I was really blinded by what I wanted. Mm-hmm. And what I wanted was to live my life the way I wanted to live it. So I took off to Texas, got married, and my mom said, you better not ever tell your dad because he'll kill you if he finds out. Mm-hmm. Well, as the story goes, he did find out. And during that time, the way he found out was they sent me money on my birthday. I signed the check with my married name, not my maiden name. And the check came back before their eyes. Back then, the bank sent the checks to
back to
cancel checks.
Right.
Yeah. And so I got a call. Why is your name signed this way? And so he did really, really struggle with that. And we were estranged for many years. He in his disability, when I say his emotional disability, he really had no tools to deal with emotional things. He got drunk when he found out that I was married, and he threatened to hurt other people.
But it's not so much, was it so much married or just the fact that you were married to a black man?
It was because I was married to a black man. Yeah, he would have been okay if I would have just said, oh yeah, here's my husband and I'd like for you to meet him. No, I was not his daughter anymore. You understand? Like, yeah. I was disowned.
Okay.
And he threatened to hurt himself first, end his life, and they had to stop him from doing that. And then he threatened to hurt other people of color because he was so distraught over my decision.
Why do you think he was so why do you think he didn't like black people?
It's just culture. It's what he was raised in, and in the Deep South there was a huge divide.
Okay.
The divide was, I was born in 1969. Mm-hmm. So, they were dealing with segregation and integration, as he was growing up. And a lot of those things were forced in the neighborhoods and in the schools. And it was a very confusing time for people. Mm-hmm. And so I just think that it was taboo, and not just taboo, but like the cardinal sin. I mean, really and truly. It's not that way anymore in South Carolina. There's everywhere you turn, there's, people of different races that are together, and it's, it's lovely. But back then, yeah, it just wasn't. Yeah. So anyway, that's how that whole thing went down. And just so that people understand redemption.
Yes.
So I did not stay with my first husband. My first husband ended up with a very pretty severe drug problem. He was got involved with some people and started doing crack cocaine, and the marriage fell apart. And so I separated from him and took a job in another state so that I could get away, because when people are attached to you, they pull on you. So I had to get away, went to another state. I actually was in the airline business. I was in reservations with American Airlines in Dallas, Fort Worth when I was married to my first husband, and then moved to Chicago, Illinois to become a flight attendant. I became a flight attendant with American Airlines.
Mm.
So that was my kind of my getaway. Well,
That was
during
one of my dreams. Be a
well, you would have been a good flight attendant, Carolyn.
uh,
You would have been a good one.
yes, seriously,
Yes.
my parents didn't want that.
You look the type, actually.
Yes,
You look the
yeah,
type.
thank you.
So what happened was, during that time after I left my husband, I was in a season where God began really showing himself to me. The Jesus that I met as a high schooler became more and more real. I was actually steeped in poor choices, behaviors that were stuck places for me, where I'd gotten myself so entrenched in just trying to do things my own way, by my own methods and my own means, that I honestly did not know how to get back to, the Bible calls Jesus our first love. When we meet him and when we fall in love with the God who loves us, but we sin and we go against his heart, it causes such a divide. And so I began to make a trek. God began to deal with me over a several year period, I'd say 3 years or so. And he began to try to help me, not try, because God doesn't try to do anything. God does everything. But he began to teach me and deliver me and to help me get unstuck. I wasn't on drugs and I wasn't an alcoholic, but what I did have is I had a very, very strong dependence upon male approval. And so what I did is I entered into relationship after relationship after relationship that was ungodly, that was unholy, that was detrimental to my life.
Mm.
Bad decision after bad decision. And so as God began to deal with me, he began to call my name, and I began to hear that wooing in my heart to return back to him. And as it turned out, he did a very quick work and brought me my husband now, who I've been married to for 30 years, a white man. Not that that was because I told the Lord, I'll go back with my first husband, because I left him in a flash. And I said, when I came back to God, Carolyn, I said this, I said, Lord, you know who I'm supposed to be with. And I will, in humility, if you want me to go back to him, like if you have it in your plan that I'm supposed to be married to him, I will honor my commitment to be married to him, and I will go back to him in the face of my family hating me, whatever. I want to honor you, Lord, whatever it is you say. And so the Lord did not confirm that. The divorce went through, and that was equitable for both of us. And it worked out that God really, truly, I believe God knows the end from the beginning. And there was grace to walk away. So anyway, my husband now been married to 30 years. We have 5 children together. When we got married, I was 24. He was 41. That was really interesting. He did not have any children. He had been married before, and he didn't think he would ever get to have children at his age, but God gave him a young wife who could have children. We had 5 children, and I have 3 grandchildren. But we had 5 children in a span of less than 8 years. It was very fast. And I'm glad that I had them all together, because it was hard. Being a mom is the hardest thing I've ever had to do. I'm very, very honest with people. Even my own kids, they'll say, "Oh no, you hated having kids, didn't you, Mom?" Well, no, I didn't hate having kids, but I have to be honest and say that
Work.
it was what I would call a real serious training ground from the Lord. He
Mm,
knew what was the best and most effective way to cause me to get closer to Jesus, and it was having
mhm,
children because I was a very selfish person. I made the decision to do my life my way at a very young age, and it took God bringing me into motherhood and setting me still and putting me in situations where I had to get desperately dependent on his
yes,
grace.
yes, yes.
And so I don't hate having children, but I'm not saying that I thought that I was the best mom either. It was really a trial for me to be a mom, especially of small children. It was
Mm.
a death
I
process.
think too, having them so close together too, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. And the
It
oldest one,
was good though. Really think about it.
yeah, it was sort of like the crash course. It's like going to a foreign country and getting immersed in the language and having to speak it because you don't have
Right,
a choice.
voice, right.
That's what it was like for me.
Yeah,
There was much grace. God was faithful, but
yeah. So how did you get on with your husband with such a age gap? Let's talk about that because you might have someone out there who you really met someone and they're like, I don't know, I'm not sure. What advice would you give to someone who has um in a relationship with a age gap like yours? Does it matter?
I've often told this story. It's so interesting. My mother, who is only, by the way, 6 years older than my husband, my mother, um, when right before I met my husband that I'm married to now, my love of my life, she said to me, okay, let me just back up. I had gotten to the point where I said, God, you've released me from this marriage. And if the first marriage, and if I
Mhm.
never marry another person, if I stay single the rest of my life, you are enough for me. I had gotten to that point in my relationship with God. So my mom said to me during that time, listen, she said, men aren't worth having until they're at least 40. It's so cute. She said, so forget about the people your age. And
Oh,
I
it's funny.
yeah, she's a darling. I love my mom.
Oh.
Anyway, she said, just forget about those guys. They don't, they're not ready until they're older. So I just said, well, mom, I'm not looking for somebody that age. Well, as the Lord would have it, about 3 weeks later, I met my husband. And I literally knew from the minute we met that 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 was it. And I said, God, I told you that I would stay single the rest of my life, and then 3 weeks later, you send me the one that's supposed to be for me,
I'm
and
41, not 40, not 39, 41.
just over the threshold. So he was actually 40 he was actually 40, Carolyn, when I met him.
Oh,
He was
oh,
41 when I married him. So we got
okay,
married at
okay,
9 months later.
okay.
So but it was funny. Yeah, he was 40. So anyway, it didn't matter to me. My husband, if you could see what he looks like, he's very youthful acting and looking, so he didn't look his age at all. And he had never had children, so it wasn't like he was worn down or anything. He was sort of like just starting over. He had been in a loveless marriage for 11 and a half years,
Mhm.
and he had just been divorced about a year when I met him. And so it just was God's thing. And to be honest with you, my mother sat at my wedding and said, oh my gosh, they don't even love each other. Now, the reason she said that is because God had put me and my husband together, and he had made it so that I was literally knowing by hearing the voice of the Lord in my spirit, I knew that I was marrying the right person. But look, David, my husband, had a lot of baggage, and I had a massive amount of baggage. So it wasn't like this fairy tale thing. We knew we were supposed to be together. So at the wedding, like I said, my mom was going, oh my gosh, they don't even love each other. But, we have grown in love together. And what I loved about my husband, Carolyn, and I will say this to anybody who's watching, if you have someone in your life that you're thinking might be the one, but there's an age gap, if you walk with God, you will find that God doesn't see things like we see them.
Yeah.
He sees them very differently than we see them. But he says that we have the mind of Christ if we're in Christ, and so he can show you how to navigate those things. I
Mhm.
don't know how I would have done what I did without the faith that was part of,
Good.
my life,
Mhm.
because I was able to see and hear beyond the natural. And
Yes.
that was that. So age doesn't matter. In fact, I tell my girls, look, they're in their 20s. Y'all need to think about an older. They're like, Mom, we don't want to do what you did.
Good.
Oh, goodness.
Oh, Lord.
You never know what God's got in store, though. I'm
That
just
is so
saying, don't
true.
close your
You
heart and
just have
mind to
to
grow.
relax. Yes. And I find, and I think when, as young ladies, when you're not looking and you just like, I don't care, that's when it comes. Honestly, that's what I believe. But when you're there looking and hoping and worrying yourself, just get on with your life, do what you have to do. And if it's to be, it will be.
Yeah. It's
Yes.
also important that you learn how to, you don't want to just become an old maid and get set in your ways and do things your way. You want to be ready for when that God sends that person. But if you're willing to find contentment in
Hmm.
the working in the plan of God for your life without the husband, then God will be able to bring it, and you'll be able to recognize that person better if you've had your heart and mind focused on the right thing before.
Right.
You're just not like out there with your
Yes.
antenna up,
Yes. Yes. It's true. It's true. It's so true. Because when you're too focused on that, it's like you get, like, I don't know, obsessed. So you know, because it's your demeanor, I guess, shows it that you're needy, and but just relax, tune into God, and he knows, like I would say, a hand on a glove, who will fit you,
That's a
and
good
he will
word.
provide. And especially if he knows that the union will not just be to buy a big house and cars, but to glorify him,
That's
because that's why we are here, to glorify him, so we can enjoy our family. Yes, of course, you have your house, you have your car, but that won't be the whole priority of coming together. So far, very interesting. Continue.
Yeah, my one of the things that was interesting about my husband is because he was older and had a relationship with the Lord for many years before he met me. I noticed a humility and a godliness that I could follow.
Okay.
And women don't want to admit, but you're not the leader.
Hmm.
The husband is the head of the home.
Okay.
I was very selfish, and I did not want to surrender, submit, give up my will, whatever, whatever.
Hmm.
But my husband's heart was very humble. He loved Jesus. And let me tell you, he loved God more than he loved me.
Mm.
That was very attractive
Mm.
because he didn't make me the center of his world.
Wow.
Because when two people come together, if they're focused this way on each other, it doesn't work. You
Yes.
have to be focused on the Lord. And
Yes.
the Lord through me ministers to my husband. And the Lord through my husband ministers to me. And
Mm.
that is how I was so attracted to him, because the godly character that he had was a reflection of me going, wait a minute, I see Christ and I don't have that same humility. What
Yes.
is it about him that is drawing me to the Lord? He didn't draw me to himself, he drew me to Jesus.
Jesus. And then by him being connected to this to God, it's just a powerful thing from the decisions he makes and so forth, right?
Yeah, because then, I mean, I'm not saying I was like, oh, you're doing so great leading our family. Believe me,
Hmm.
women always struggle like, well, he's wanting to do this and I'm wanting to do that. But what I learned was that if I could trust God first and say, God, you put the order of you, my husband, and myself, that's my place of safety. God, he will answer to you. if
Mm-hmm.
he does something that is out of,
Right,
that is the
right,
wrong decision or whatever.
right, right.
I will answer to you if I don't honor him.
Mm-hmm.
And my position, I had to learn to honor men. I had issues with men, Carolyn.
Mm-hmm.
I either wanted to be dishonoring to them or to overpower them
Mm,
because I had been abused by men.
mm. So
So
I guess you were just fighting back too.
always, yes, of
Mhm.
course. We're just human beings.
Yes,
We're gonna do
yes,
the
yes.
what we feel we got to do at the moment for survival. But once I surrendered to Christ, then I could say, I want to do things the way that honors you, Lord. And if I am honoring you,
Mm-hmm.
then people will be honored in my life.
Yes.
So it's a beautiful thing. We
Mm-hmm.
don't like to, as women, we don't like to admit that we even need men. It's taboo to say, I need a man.
Mm.
Well, I'm not telling you you need a man. What I'm telling you is you need the man, Christ Jesus, first. And then you need to let him choose who
Choose.
he wants you with if he wants you with someone.
Yes, yes. And
Hmm,
he knows,
he knows.
though the shadow of a doubt, he'll find the person for you.
Exactly.
He
If
will.
you make God your delight,
Mm-hmm.
there's a scripture that says, God will give you the desires of your heart. Now, that doesn't mean that he just
Is
fulfills.
that Matthew 6:33? We're not having a Bible study right now, but is that Matthew 6:33? Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these
That's
things shall
like
be
it.
added unto you. That's one of my favorite texts.
Yes, I do too. Because if you
Mhm,
put him first,
mhm.
he's going to actually give you the desires in here that are from him. It's
Yes.
not just he fulfills your wish list, he
Mm-hmm.
puts the right desires in you when you have sought him first.
Mm.
That's it.
I see. Yeah.
Mhm.
Very interesting conversation. I like that. I like that.
Mhm.
All
And
right. So
I'm
go
sorry,
ahead.
go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say my husband was a catalyst for why I'm where I am now. I mean, the nutrition piece,
Mm-hmm.
it's all because of my husband that
So
I am
we
here.
so to tell us about that then. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's
Tell
really
us
good.
where you're coming from health wise and how you are now a nutritionist. Tell us all that.
Yeah, so when we were first married, I had chronic headaches. I was very unhealthy. I thought that, eating healthy meant that you buy the fat-free cookies and the lean cuisines at the store, the frozen healthy foods or whatever. That's what I thought eating healthy was. But I had chronic headaches. I had allergies to every weed, tree, and plant on the planet. And there was no end in sight. I was 24 years old and had a lot of issues cropping up as a young person. Well, I sent my husband to the health food store to buy me some natural energy pills.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody had told me about, and my husband came home with not my natural energy pills. He came home with a box of colon cleansing tea and a book about health conditions and the foods that cause them and the foods that heal them. And I was not happy. I was very angry that he did not bring me my energy pills that I wanted. So, but of course, what are you going to do? He ain't going to go buy them. So I'm not going to go, be that way. So I said, okay, I'll drink the tea. I didn't like it, but I'll drink it. And I didn't even understand what colon cleansing was about. But
Mm-hmm.
this book that he brought home, I opened the book and literally God was on the move because scales began to fall off my eyes. The darkness that I walked in as far as the nutrition piece of our human existence, that darkness began to fade. So here's what happened. Read the book in 24 hours, saw all the conditions that were common in my family, and realized that I was headed in the same direction if I did not choose different what to put in my mouth. That next morning, I got up and I rid my entire home of any processed food whatsoever. No white flour, no white sugar, nothing processed.
Mm.
Now, I'm not saying that I never ate that again, but what I'm telling you is that I made sure that I cut off the path that I had been on so that I could take a new path.
Mm.
That that decision was a trajectory for the rest of my life. I was also damaged in a car wreck when I was 16 years old, an 8-car pileup. My car was the car that hit 6 other cars after a car behind me hit me. So I had a lot of health issues because of that trauma as well. Your muscles, your cells, they all have memory. And I was carrying this trauma as well as the trauma from being in an home, alcoholic's home. So I needed something to change the path in my life. Well, I got very, very focused on health, and I developed sort of a real, I guess it's just a love and a passion to see people be fully alive for everything God has planned for you. Because if we are eating things that
Mhm.
are causing us to be ill,
Oh,
it's actually causing death. And
yes.
Jesus is life, and I don't want to side with that. So I want
Mm.
to eat the things that He's given us. I want my lifestyle to be so that I can live fully engaged for everything and for the reason I'm here. So that's what led me down this path. I began coach. I've always shared health and nutrition as God has given me understanding, and it
Thank
is a supernatural understanding.
you. Mhm.
I've ministered that to people, but I was certified as a health coach in 2012. And then just this year, I got my functional nutrition counselor certification, which allows me to be able to help people figure out what's going on in their own bodies. And it's not a one size fits all protocol, Carolyn.
Mhm.
Every person is unique, every story is different. Therefore, what foods work for me may not work for you. And that's what I love to help people uncover.
Mm.
It's all because my husband didn't buy them pills, I'm telling you.
Well, I'm glad he did, unless we maybe wouldn't be here sitting down talking, right?
Exactly.
Yes, yes,
Exactly.
yes. So tell me more about that accident.
Yeah, so the accident was really quite dramatic. Back in the 80s in South Carolina, going to a chiropractor was not the thing to do. Had I been to a chiropractor when I had the wreck, I probably would not have had the problems that came later in my body as far as structurally with my spine. So the car wreck happened in the middle of summer. My brother and I were in a car that had no air conditioning in South Carolina, which you got to know is hot.
Yeah.
And 30 seconds before the wreck, I was driving. My brother was passenger. He was 12. I was 16. 30 seconds before the wreck, I got so hot. I took my seatbelt off. My brother copied me on the other side,
Mhm.
and we crested a hill. There was a car stopping to turn in front of me. I had to slam on the brakes, and as a result, the car behind me hit me. I
Mm.
had just taken off my seatbelt.
Okay. Mm.
My brother's body was thrown from the front seat through the back windshield under the car. His arm was severed, and he died on the way to the hospital, though they revived him.
Mm.
So he was then did not have full use of that arm the rest of his life, but they did repair it pretty good. I was thrown around the inside of the car across 2 lanes of oncoming traffic. It was a 4-lane highway, the opposite like
Mm.
that. I was across the traffic when cars were, hitting me. And I was sent home with bruises. I did not even have a broken bone to the glory of God.
Mm.
But what I didn't know is that the trauma of the wreck and the whiplash from being hit from behind, by the time I was 26 years old, I had my first child, and I was getting to the point where my hands and arms were going numb all the time. I was waking up unable to move my neck. I had lost the curve to my neck. I still don't have a curve in my neck.
Mm.
And so structurally, there were many issues. I've been under chiropractic care since then, since I was 26 years old. I'm getting ready to turn 54 on Monday.
Mm.
So I've been in chiropractic care all those years. However, I will say that when I stay, now that I know what to do with my nutrition, when I keep myself on an anti-inflammatory
Right.
regimen of diet and lifestyle, it makes all the difference. I mean, I can stay out of the chiropractor's office instead of going once or twice a week. I can go every other week or once a month.
So when you don't keep on that regime, what really is happening to your body?
So the body is trying to, because of the trauma of the wreck
Hmm.
and all of the other things I've talked about today, the body, whenever you have foods that stress your body out, processed foods, foods that are known to cause inflammation, processed oils are one of those things that cause inflammation.
Cow's milk. Dairy.
Yes, dairy and things like that. Gluten is one of the big issues, and I don't want to scare people and make them think I tell everybody to stay away from all of those things. I'm just telling you what the inflammatory foods are. Okay,
Sure. Right, right.
so when you take those into your body, the body then has to try to figure out what to do with them and how to negotiate processing them to get the new whatever nutrient could or would be in there, and then it causes a lot of stress on the digestive system, and when your digestive system is stressed, your immune system is stressed. So understand that when I was having a lot of pain, a lot of inflammation, a lot of brain fog, it had to do with my immune system being weak. So
Hmm.
your immune system's supposed to be able to help you negotiate invaders, things that come in and that really aren't supposed to be there. But maybe if you're really healthy, it's like this. If I keep up with my health, I can every once in a while have a piece of cake.
Hmm.
But if I don't, that very thing that I eat will cause my body to go into a defense mode, and I will be put in pain in my joints or something to the like. So for me, I've learned how to live an anti inflammatory lifestyle. Most people would benefit from that way. You know, that's how your ancestors ate.
Hmm.
All of our ancestors ate anti inflammatory because they didn't have processed foods.
Exactly. The poorer life. You want
Yeah.
to put it that way.
You know, eating meat and vegetables, fruits, eating the things that grow out of the ground and that sort of thing. The stuff that God has put in the earth in natural. I always tell people if you want to know how to eat as close to the ground as possible.
Possible. Yep. Good advice.
closest, closest as natural state. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yep. Well, it was really, really, really a pleasure talking with you. Is there anything you wanted to mention before you go?
Well,
Um,
a lot of people want to know, like they'll say, "Well, I heard you here, heard you there. How can I get in touch with you?" It's
yes,
very,
please.
it's
Please leave your
very
name,
simple.
your website. Yes.
Yeah. So the website is Merry Merry Heart Heart Nutrition.com. Merry Heart Nutrition.com.
Yeah.
And there's a proverb, Proverbs 15:15, that says, "He who is of a merry heart has a continual feast." And
Mhm.
we're not going to be healthy in our mind and our emotions, even spiritually. It's difficult to grow in our walk with God when our bodies are under such enormous attack trying to deal with the things that we're putting in it. And so that is the reason that I started MerryHeartNutrition.com, to be able to book times to talk with people one on one and to help them decode what's going on in there.
So remember to leave your number.
The phone number,
Mm-hmm.
okay, it's 336
Mm-hmm.
313 9010. It's Mary Hart Nutrition's phone number, 336 313 9010.
0.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's been a pleasure having you here. It really has been. And there's so much we have learned. And later on, as you've just started your business, love to see you come back and have another conversation with us sometime. So until then, see you then. Bye bye. Thank you so
Bye.
much for coming, Mary.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. Yes, that was a beautiful conversation with Mary's. Um, Thank you all for sitting and listening. And I'm sure you've learned something. You've been motivated to take better care of your body if you weren't. So many things you could learn from that story. And before we go, I want to leave a thought. And the thought is from, it says that it's a slogan, and it says, I'm not sure who wrote it, but it says, eat healthy, live long, live strong, eat well, live well, eat well, feel well, commit to be fit. We are what we eat. Eat right, be right. Thank you so much for being here. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Until we meet again, this is Carolyn, your host from Express, saying bye bye.